welcome in our trackside audience. Yes, a very good afternoon to everyone through there and radio. Heading to the start, the talking is all over, ladies and gentlemen. Stand by for some horse racing. Are you ready for this? The racing. Getting away.
I remember it was like it was yesterday. I know it's 13 years ago, but there was a vibe about the day. It was one of my first sessions on the first call in the morning. I wasn't involved in trackside in those days, so drove down to Hamilton in the studio there and stuck between Daryl Anderson, Des Coppins and Stewie Lang. And Paul Alley, who was the head of the bookmakers, came into me and said, "Oh, I've just done lay of the day today, Muscle and Power. What do you think?" And I said to Paul, "Geez, wouldn't have had that as your lay of the day, Paul. I think from the front row draw, he's your likely leader." He said, "Oh God, I've just pushed him out from 5 to 7. And I could see the blood started to drain out of the face, and he wanted to get back into that makeup chair after that to refresh himself. But yeah, it actually drew 8, crossed him to the front, and I think it closed off at around about $3 that day, Muscle and Power. Unfortunately, later, about a month later, the horse actually got disqualified for a prohibitive substance, and Merckx was the winner. But for the punters that backed it that day, they didn't care. Leading into the Jewels, the best guide for me going to the Jewels was actually going to the Harness Jewels trials on the Saturday. I went down there, I snuck down there. Of course, those days there was no tapes or no trials that you could access, so unless you were there, you didn't see them. And to be honest, there was 2 or 3 runners on the day that actually made up my mind on the day that I thought they could either win or they couldn't. And there was a couple that the bookmakers had at really nice prices. I know Laura Ella, I was there and I was clocking the 2-year-old trial at the Harness Jewels that day, and I looked at my stopwatch and I looked at this horse and I thought, geez, $12, this is a really good chance in the Jewels with a good draw. And that trial cemented me on top for her, and I think she closed at about $4.90, but I was, in those days there was no getting on the internet and punching away. I was sitting in the trials box at Cambridge Raceway on my phone and putting my 150 on Laura Ella at $12, putting it down again and thinking, shall I go again? And I did, and it was just one of those days where you not only found winners, but you found horses that you thought could win, but they tipped the other side and didn't go against them. I knew a long time in advance that this day there was a lot that the bookmakers didn't get right, because they opened them up a long time in advance. And the classic example was race number 1. It was taken out by Nerea Franco from the McRae team, and the bookmakers 7 weeks out had put up $61 for this mare. And at that stage I thought, gee, she may not make the field, but I tell you what, if she does, she's a realistic winning chance. And I remember putting 100 on at 61 and thinking, God, I hope she makes the field. About 3 weeks later, she had won a race, and then the field had started falling away. And I could see that she was going to make the field, and then she won again, and then the field started to drop away. And of course, as it happened, she ended up with a great barrier draw. I think she drew 6 in race number 1, and she went round at $1.40. So the $61 6 weeks out looked pretty good.
And she has been ruthless in the finish. Nerea Franco by 5. Stablemate Letitia Franco second. Third of the line.
Well, it was a day that flashed so quickly, because from races 1 to 9, it just seemed to go in a heartbeat. And the favourites and the horses that we'd prepared to back, they were winning. And of course, you'd been on for such a long time. You had the tickets in your hand and you were looking at the multis, and they were rolling through, and they were quite considerable. I was sitting with a guy that had travelled down with me in his beaten old van, and he had tickets there were exceeding over $200,000 in multis, and they were coming in. I could see him physically shaking. He was sitting beside me. Changed his life. But it wasn't just that. It was just, there was a wonderful vibe. I was sitting with half a dozen guys in the marquee tent right beside the track there, and the race, a lot of the races unfolded differently than what we thought. You know, Sovereignty had to withhold a 20-minute inquiry. That could have changed the day for the bookmakers. It ended up holding that inquiry. Obviously, what happened with Muscle and Power early on, there was 2 or 3 things that could have gone the bookies' way. Luckily for the punters, it didn't. All right?
Yeah, good.
Okay,
beautiful.
sweet.
Sweet.
Fantastic. Okay, mate.